and a member of CEL, and hosting this evening session. Well, friends, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics interface provide us an understanding of the grammar of the language. I believe syntax and semantics interface explains a correlation between form and meaning, and pragmatics enables us to understand the context-based meaning of the language, as in how people produce and comprehend the meaning through the use of language. We are going to hear soon on this issue within a short while from now. Well, those who are new today, this is the prestigious forum, the Society for Endangered and Lesser Known Languages, also called CEL, which was founded in the year 2011 by Professor Kavita Rastogi, with the aim to revitalize endangered and lesser known languages by bringing like-minded people together to document such languages, describe grammars, prepare dictionaries and pedagogical materials for the native communities. The team CEL worked on several languages like Raji, Jad, Tharu, Dharma, and continues working with several other indigenous languages for their preservation and documentation. Also takes initiative to reach a larger community of dedicated researchers and professionals, and start grants and scholarships that will help in this mission.
आज का है
Ajit Chaudhary, please mute yourself. Most of us here know that every year CEL organizes international conference for endangered and lesser known languages, also called ELKL, in various universities and institutes across the country. And CEL makes provision for linguists and language activists to publish their work, the lesser known and indigenous languages, in their bilingual, biannual, peer-reviewed e-journal called Vak Manthan. Most importantly, CEL encourages and trains dedicated, passionate researchers through workshops and online lectures and various online presentations. This evening, CEL is conducting the 4th session of 4 CEL by CEL series, where CEL members present their ongoing research and experts, who is also a senior CEL member, provide guidelines and suggestions to them. This evening, our presenter is Sushanta Rajkhowa, a faculty from Tejpur Central University and a member of CEL. His presentation is titled as The Syntax-Semantics-Pragmatics Interface and Indian Languages. This is an intriguing subject indeed, as it pertains to the understanding of the grammar of the language of Indian languages. And our expert for this evening is a distinguished linguist, Professor K. Srikumar, who is the head at the Department of Linguistics, University of Lucknow. He teaches various courses such as general linguistics, generative syntax, phonetics, phonology, sociolinguistics, dialectology. His area of interest particularly lies in Malayalam and in general, other languages within the broader framework of universal grammar, especially Chomsky's theory of government and binding and subsequent developments such as the minimalist program. Professor Srikumar has a long list of publications. To name a few, he has written a number of papers on various domains in Malayalam language, such as an articulatory and acoustic study of trills in Malayalam, control in Malayalam, clefts in Malayalam, a focused movement perspective, verbal deixis in Malayalam, WH scope extraction in Malayalam, the morphosyntax of a Petuka compound in Malayalam, complex predicates with petuka in Malayalam, verb morphology and clause structure in Malayalam, compounds in Malayalam, some observations on a putative phonological rule in Malayalam, an argument for syllable coda, locating the locative in Malayalam, psych nominals in Malayalam, and many more. This evening, his expert opinions is going to be beneficial not only to the presenter, but to all of us present here. Welcome on the forum, Professor Sri Kumar. May I now invite the presenter of this evening, Sushanta Rajkhowa. You may present now.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Just give me a moment. It's okay to switch off my video camera, right?
That's all right, as you wish.
Okay. Yeah, I hope it is visible now, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start.
Yeah.
A very warm good evening to everyone. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organizing committee of For Sale, By Sale 2023 to give me a platform to where I can present my views and opinions on the topic of the Syntax-Semantics-Pragmatics interface and Indian languages. So let's start actually. So when we see the current research area, we see that any linguistic theory, it's crucial for doing any research in languages, because when we go to the descriptive linguistics, it can take us only till one particular point. It can give us description of all the data, all the phenomena going in the language, but it does not explain, or it cannot explain why and how some phenomena is seen in a language. Okay. And when we, on the other hand, we see contemporary linguistic theory, which aims to develop models which characterize all human languages, and along with giving accounts for all the possible linguistic systems or all the possible linguistic phenomena going in the language. So this ultimately brings in the interface level, which takes on phenomena that pertains to at least two areas. It can be more than two, but like at least it has to be two areas. Let's say we have the interface between phonetics and phonology and morphology. We have the interface between morphology and syntax. We again have the interface between syntax and semantics, and then syntax, semantics, pragmatics, and so on. And in the current research scenario, interface between syntax, semantics, and pragmatics is an emerging area of research, and it takes on phenomena like questions, be it polar questions, be it WH questions, or be it bias questions, or be it rhetorical questions. There's also research you've seen in the case of conditionals, like conditionals means the if-then constructions. If I'll go, then he will join me too. And then we have also explanation of for phenomena like allocutive agreement. We have explanation for phenomena like homonymy, that between certain elements of a language. We see interface playing its part in the phenomena of agreement shift, indexical shift, and so on. Yeah. And then when we go to a language, we see that the lexicon of a language specifies the semantic and the syntactic qualities of words. But there's a recent development. So the recent development is that the syntactic classification is fixed not within the vocabulary, but rather in the syntax. And the argument in support is that the syntax of many languages, that's the same word with the same value, be employed as a verb or a noun. Let's say we take the word walk in English. And we have the example number 1, I walk to school every day. And we have example number 2, he went out for a walk. So in example number 1, the word walk is used as a verb, as opposed to example number 2, where the word walk is used as a noun. So in example 1, we have a verb, and in example 2, we have a noun. So it is a grammatical structure of a language that conveys meaning in a particular setting, which results in communication. And the goal of communication is achieved in various dissimilar ways in which the syntax, semantics, and pragmatics of a particular language interact. So communication is the result of the interaction of all these three main phenomena. It's a result of the syntax, semantics, and pragmatics interacting with the same elements and then giving rise to different phenomena. And again, we see discourse pragmatics playing an important role in connecting the syntax and syntactic and the semantic representations. So pragmatics come to, in certain areas or in certain phenomena, we see pragmatics come to the rescue in connecting the syntactic and the semantic phenomena going in a language. So when we see the origin of interface as to how this area developed, because it's not that it's very recent, but still it's recent, but not that recent. So the origin of the interface studies can be traced back to linguistic wars, which we all know, which was a dispute between going on in the American theoretical linguistics during the 1960s and 70s, where when Chomsky's aspects of the theory of syntax was in speak. So it all started when the self-proclaimed fourth horseman of the apocalypse, Paul Postel, Haj Ross, George Lakoff, and James Macaulay, they proposed a relationship that syntax and semantics, they have a relation, and they try to establish a relation between deep structure and meaning. So deep structure and meaning was connected, as opposed to being deep structures treated as syntactic objects. So generative grammarians, on the other hand, they argue that meaning is derived from syntax, or it's like the syntax that gives rise to the meaning, or syntax gives rise to the semantics. But this is totally the opposite view of generative semanticists, who argue that syntax is derived from meaning. So it's meaning that gives rise to syntax. So in course of time, generative semantics develop into cognitive linguistics, who started to study the relation between language and mind. So this is how the whole thing of the interface studies developed. So going to the approaches that they take, we have two approaches in the interface studies. We have the formalist approach and we have the functionalist approach. So the formalists, they try to limit the explanation of any syntactic phenomena in the going on in a language within the syntax. So this formalist approach is also called the morphosyntax semantics interface, or the syntax lexical semantics interface. So here the sole focus is on the syntax of the language. The first priority is given to syntax, and then the other things coming. So the things, steps that they take are, they map syntactic structures to denotations, as which structures denote some meaning, and there are many views regarding many scholars, and the main differences between the inputs and outputs of the semantic mapping, as what is the input of the semantic mapping and what is the output of the semantic mapping. So that is the main difference. But the main thing that they do is like they mainly map syntactic structures to denotations, and the most common view is the Hyman-Kruzer model, where the input is called the logical form, or LF, and the output is called the phonetic form, or PF. The operations that we see in this approach are scope and binding, Y quantify raising, and lambda abstractions, and so on. And there are also other methods employed, which are like type shifting, which changes the semantic type of a particular entity, and dynamic binding, which is related to concepts like context rewriting or context overwriting. So this is what the formalist approach treats interface as. As opposed to this, the functionalist approach, it looks into the semantics and pragmatics for explaining the syntactic phenomena. So the functionalists, they go into the semantics and pragmatics for explaining any syntactic phenomena. So the main aim of the functionalist approach is to disprove the argument of the autonomy of syntax by finding semantically derived, semantically determined syntactic structures. And they state that phenomena they are in search of phenomena which are semantically determined but are syntactically encoded. So let's say, for example, we have the second person honorificity in Indian languages and verbal agreement. We have two languages here, Assamese and Hindi. So Assamese and Hindi, they make distinctions of the second person pronoun you in three types. The first is the non-honorific or polite, tumi or tum. The second is the non-honorific and informal, toy or tu. And the third is the honorific, formal, and polite, apuni or a. So these three forms of the same, these three other forms of the same personal pronoun you, of the same second personal pronoun you, but each one has a separate agreement marker. So this thing that is like it's in the agreement is a syntactically encoded, but which is semantically determined by these three entities. So, and the claim of the functionalist is like the more semantically motivated the syntactic phenomena is, the more universal it is, and that is less cross-linguistic variation is seen. So we see the this honorific distinction of the second person pronoun you as the non-honorific, polite, non-honorific, informal, and honorific, formal, and polite across the Indo-Aryan languages. It is uniform in case of second person. And then we finally come to research at the interface level in Indian languages. And we see that in recent research, the interface between the syntax, semantics, pragmatics constitutes a major thrust area in linguistics. But still, we know very little of how these subsystems work in case of Indian languages. And by Indian languages, we can take any Indo-Aryan language or any Dravidian language or any Tibetan or any Austro-Asiatic language. Okay, so we have the syntax, semantics, and everything described to us, but we don't know how the interaction works, or we don't know, or we still cannot explain, or we still don't explain, or don't have any accounts of how certain phenomena work goes on in a language. So going on to languages like Boro, Missing, Tiwa, Rabha, we are still not sure, or we don't have a clear account or why or how certain phenomena works in the languages. So these phenomena that works on at the interface level, they are still not explored, or they are still just like starting to get explored. So since research at the interface level has not been carried out much, so there we might have numerous phenomena going on in the language, which might still be undiscovered and hence unexplained. So this main discussion, this is discussion that we are having, it summarizes some of the emerging areas of research seen in Indian languages in this field. So we take on some areas that are tried to be explained through the interface level. We can take on honorificity and agreement. We take on conditionals. We can take on glossing of certain elements in the language, and then we take on questions, allocative agreement, indexical shift, agreement shift, and so on. These are just some of the areas which are investigated through the interface level. So first we come to honorificity and agreement. Yeah, so honorificity, it's not a very uncommon thing in Indian languages. So by Indian languages, I mean here Assamese and Hindi. So Assamese and Hindi, along with displaying honorificity in case of second person pronouns, they have different agreement markers on the verb. So which we already came on in the example previously. So we have the non-honorific second person toy in Assamese and the non-honorific second person tu, which are which in Hindi. So in this case, in case of the non-honorific toy and tu, the verb seems to be in the base form. So kha is the verb. So let's take a look at the examples 4, 5, 6, and 7. So here kha is the verb. So we have the example number 4, toy kha, which means you eat. Tu kha, you eat. Apuni khao, you eat. So here apuni is the honorific form. And then we have example number 7, aap khao. And then aap is again the honorific form. So the difference that we are seeing here is like in case of examples 4 and 5, the verb seems to be in the base form. But in case of examples number 6 and 7, there is an overt agreement marker present in the along with the verb. So how do we explain this? How do we explain the absence of tense and agreement markers in case of examples number 4 and 5? So syntax explains this phenomena through movement and states that the overt markers that are seen in the case of examples number 6 and 7 are covert in this case. Yeah, so that's how it says. But going into the semantics of toy and tu, we see that these are the non-honorific forms. Okay, so non-honorific forms they do not require the tense and agreement markers to be present in the verb. The verb in the base form is sufficient to express the utterance. So this is how interface can take on in this phenomena. So in languages like Rabha, Boro, Missing, and Tiwa, there is no distinction between the honorific distinction in case of second person pronouns. So which further gives us the solution to this question as to why when Rabha, Boro, Missing, or Tiwa, when a person of that ethnicity, he takes on a language like, or he tries to, or he uses a language like Assamese or Hindi, why he is making so many mistakes in the second person agreement markers. So this is mostly due to the impact of the first language. So this is just an example of another language. So this is how their first language can impact the second language. So moving on, we have conditionals. Now conditionals, so they are sentences that express that one event is dependent on the another event. So we have the example, if he comes, I will go. So the event of me going is dependent on the event of his coming. So it's I will go only if he comes. So conditionals, they are also because the main event is conditional on the dependent clause. So in example number 8, I will go, that's the main event. And the dependent clause, if he comes, that's the dependent clause. And the main event, me going, as I mentioned earlier, me going is dependent on whether he comes or not. If he comes, then only I will go. So they are comprised of two clauses, the antecedent clause and the consequent clause. So in example number 8, if he comes, it is the antecedent clause, and I will go is the consequent clause. So when we come to languages like Assamese and Bangla, so conditionals are expressed in two ways. So the first way is where the antecedent and consequent are expressed via overt elements. So we have example number 9. We have Jodi Rame khai tente moyu kham, which means if Ram has food, I will have two. So Jodi and tente are two overt elements which are expressing the antecedent and the consequent. That's one way of expressing a conditional. The second way of expressing a conditional is like there's only one marker, and that marker is used in the antecedent clause. So we have example number 10. So 10, Rame khale moyu kham. If Ram has food, I will have food. I will have food too, or I will have it too. So we saw that in example number 9. So there were like overt tense and agreement marking in both the clauses, in both the antecedent clauses and both the and the consequent clause. But in example number 10, we see that the tense and agreement marking is seen only in the consequent clause and not in the antecedent clause. So the metric clause has overt tense and agreement, the subordinate clause lacks it. So I'll bring in the tense and agreement system of Assamese into here. So Assamese uses the past tense marker as la or il, and for third person agreement and third person and second person agreement, it uses the marker a. So we have the example number 10 where we have Rame khale. So the la and a, which form le, they can be said that okay, this is the tense and agreement markers at play here. Okay, that's why I brought in the tense and agreement markers in Assamese to show that the past tense marker in Assamese is la, and the third person agreement marker for the past and present tense are a respectively. But this conditional marking on the antecedent clause remains the same for all the personal pronouns. So if we change the personal pronoun from Rame to Moy, we still have the same. Moy gole Ramu jabo, which means if I go, Ram will go too. And if I state Moy khale Rameu khabo, which means if I have food, Ram will have it too. So it's clearly the le is not the tense and agreement marker here. Because if it were the tense and agreement marker here, then it would have changed due to the subject Moy. But that is not the case. So how do we express tense and agreement? So for Bangla, we see research on conditionals by Guha in her 2020 and 2022 works. So it is also an interesting area of research considering the typology of conditionals in languages like Assamese and Bangla. So this can also be explained from the point of view of interface, or interface can also provide solution to this aspect. Then we have glossing. So a very common phenomenon in Indian languages is like homonymy. So, and it raises the issue with glossing certain homophonic elements in the language. So we have examples from Assamese. So we have the Assamese biased polar question particle neki and the alternative question neki. So the ne, as proposed by Dr. Borba in 27, ne is the interrogative disjunction. And if we look at example number 12, Rame kitabkhon kinile neki. So here the proposal is that neki is not a conjugation of ne and ki, but it is in fact a single element. It's not, there are no two elements, as opposed to example number 13, where the example is kitabkhon kaliloi kinin neki. So the first is Rame kitabkhon kinile neki, which means did Ram buy the book? It's a polar question. And the example number 13, kitabkhon kaliloi kinin neki. Shall we buy the book tomorrow, or what should we do? The verb usually follows. So example number 12 is a biased question where the speaker might be biased for a positive or a negative answer. Whereas we see example number 13, it's an alternative question where the speaker presents the adversary two unbiased choices to choose from. So one can easily say, or it can be said that the Neki in the example number 12 and 13 are the same elements, but it is not the case. So going into the context provides us the answer. So for example number 12, we might have a context that Ram is one of our friends, and I already know that he was supposed to buy a book. So with that knowledge in mind, I questioned our group of friends that Rame kitabkhon kinile neki. So I have a bias towards a positive answer that he might have bought the book or he might not have bought the book. And for 13, we have a context like we along with a group of friends, we return home after getting tired, but just before entering home we remember that we forgot to buy a book. So so I present to my friends the two choices that we can buy the book tomorrow, or we can buy the book, or we can do whatever they want to do. So one is the choice of buying the book tomorrow, and the other is a choice of doing whatever they want to. So this brings out the difference between example number 12 and example number 13. So we see that although there is no phonological distinction between these two, neki and neki, in example number 12 and 13, it can be the difference can be made only from the context, and hence pragmatics to the rescue. So to explain for this syntactic phenomena, we are taking the help of pragmatics or of context. And then we come to complementizers again. So complementizers, as we all know, so they are mainly, they connect the matrix clause to the complement clause, and are kind of equivalent to the English word that. So Assamese follows a hybrid complementary system where bully is the final or quotative complementizer because it has been derived from the verb bull, which means say, and ze is the initial complementizer by Bayer 1999. So the final complementizer bully or the quotative complementizer bully, apart from being a complementizer, it also performs other functions. So the first function is like it also performs the function of defining something or giving the meaning of known as. So we have the example yak Taj Mahal buli kwa hoy, which means this is known as Taj Mahal. And then we have also a bully serving the meaning of with the intention of or with the purpose of. So we have the example number 15. Moi kham buli goisilo, which means I went with the purpose of having food. Okay, so here bully is expressing intention or purpose. And then we have bully expressing the meaning as because. So we have the example, he matile bulliye zabane. So will you go there just because he called, or will you go just because he called? So here bully, not expressing, not being expressed, not expressing its function as a complementizer, is performing the functions of known as, or expressing intention, or expressing the meaning of because. So the problem is, can we gloss bully as a complementizer in all these cases? So the possible solution that can be taken into consideration is like context and meaning are taken into account to determine the place of bully in the syntactic tree, as whether it should be in the head of CP, or it should have another node of its own, or another projection, another new projection. So that's where interface comes into the picture. And then questions, as we already mentioned, for explaining questions, the syntax, semantics, and pragmatics interface is used. So we are taking polar and alternative questions to account. So polar questions in most of the Indian languages, apart from using the polar question particle like kya or kya in Hindi or ne in Bangla, can also be conveyed with a final rising intonation. So we have a polar question like tumi sa khabane, will you have tea? So I can still form the polar question saying tumi sa khaba. So the final rising intonation can also be used to convey that it is a polar question. Alternative questions, on the other hand, present two choices from which the addressee has to choose from. So I have a question like tumi sa khabane coffee. So which means will you have tea or coffee? So here I'm offering the addressee two choices of two different items, and he has to choose either of them. So from the point of view of syntax, we see that there's a fixed position for the question particle. So na being the question particle, so there's a fixed position for the question particle, and the question particle is the head of the projection. But following semantics and pragmatics, the possible answers of a question are also taken into account. So this we go back to the works of Biesma and Rollins 2012 and Bhattendale 2018. So for answers to polar questions, they say that the answers to polar question is comprised of a set of just one set, and it contains sets of possible worlds. And all from that set of possible worlds, adversary has to choose from. So he has a set of possible answers at his disposal, and he can choose from that answer and answer the question, which further explains the question that why polar questions can be answered other than yes or no. So if somebody asks me, "Tumi sa khabane," I can I can reply as "Mon nai mor." I don't mind, or "Mor bhuk laga nai," or "I'm not hungry," or "Mor mon bhal laga nai," or "I'm not feeling good." That kind of things. And answers to alternative questions, although two choices are provided through from which adversary has to choose from. So here the sets are restricted. The sets are restricted to two items, but still the adversary has to freedom to choose one, both, or neither. So if somebody asks, would you like to have tea or coffee? I can answer, I like to have tea, I like to have coffee, or I would like to have nothing, or I would like to have the both. So this is what this is explained from the point of view of answers. So from the point of view of semantics and pragmatics, the possible answers of a question are taken into account. Regarding the final rising intonation in Indian languages, according to syntax, semantics, and pragmatics interface, the rising intonation is also considered to be a question operator, which finally results in the declarative being interpreted as a question. So the pragmatics and semantics are taken to explain the answer the question fetches, which ultimately feed into the syntax and determine the position of the particle of the element. Then we have biased questions. So biased questions have not been worked on much. So as far as the research we have seen, we see only they have been worked only in case of Bangla. So they are cases of indirect speech act or complex speech acts, which are questions and assertions at the same time. Or they can be also said to be questions that convey an expectation on the part of the speaker for a positive or a negative answer. So we already came across in the slide where I try to differentiate neki and neki. So the first was like Rame kitapkhon kinle neki. So did Ram buy the book? So I already have a predisposed notion that Ram has bought the book. So that's why I accept the answer as a yes. So I have a positive bias towards it. So this is not seen in the case of neutral questions or polar questions. So in case of polar questions, the speaker has free choice in terms of selection of the answer. So for bias questions, we have seen that Shu has worked for the bias question particle Naki in Bangla in 2017. So and for Assamese, the research is still going on. And Naki and Neki, the Bangla Naki and the Assamese Naki, along with the function, along with giving the interpretation of a bias question particle, they also function as evidentials in the language. So evidentials are the elements which are used when you present an information based on some evidence. So these bias questions, so this is where the syntax and the pragmatics of Naki and Neki come into the picture and can be used to explain Naki and Neki. Then we have the phenomena of allocative agreement. So this is another trending area, or this is a recent area of research that is explained for using the syntax-semantics-pragmatics interface. So it allocative agreement mainly marks properties of the adversary of the current speech event, and also provides information about a gender, number, or politeness status to whom the utterance is directed. And it is allocative agreement is not subject and object agreement. Okay, so it is additional morphology seen in the verb with respect to the adversary of the with respect to whom the utterance is directed to. So there are grammaticalized morphological markers in the verbal or clausal inflection system, and we do not see the honorific terms like sir, ma'am, etc. It is seen in languages like Maghi, where research has been done by Alok and Baker in 2019, and in Tamil, where research has been done by Thomas McFadden in 2020. So we come to allocative agreement in Maghi. Okay. Yeah. So in Maghi, we see that the finite verb optionally bears additional morphology expressing the honorificity status of the adversary with respect to the speaker. Okay. So we have example number 17. Hum jait hi. I am going. So this is the utterance, and if I have to say the utterance to somebody who is junior to me, or somebody who is senior to me, or somebody who is super senior to me, I will have additional marking on the verb. So there's a three-way distinction, that there's like non-honorific distinction, honorific, and high honorific. So If I say if let's say I say hum chai thi to one of my friends, then I will have to use the allocative agreement marker ao. So I'll have the utterance hum chai hiao. Okay, so that is how I'm saying it to a friend. So if I have to say it to a parent or a guardian, I'll have the honorific marking, just honorific marking. So I'll have to say hum chai hio. The O is the honorific allocative marker. And let's say I have to say the same utterance to one of my teachers, or let's say to a minister, or to some to a person holding a high position. Then I will have to use the marker I. So I will have the utterance will be like hum jai hi I. So I is the high honorific allocative marker, O is the honorific allocative marker, and AU is the non-honorific allocative marker. Okay, so this is additional verbal morphology which expresses allocative agreement. And in case of Muggy, we see honorificity as a determining factor. So in Muggy, we also see that the embedded verb bears the same marking that is present on the matrix verb to reflect the status of the addressee. So let's say I am stating the sentence, Santhia thought that Bunty went to run. So let's say I say this sentence to somebody for who has a high honorific status. So I will say like example number 19, Santhia soche kai ki Bantiya bhag gelai. So this is how it is said to a teacher. So if I say the same utterance to one of my friends, then I will have to use the allocative agreement marker out. So I'll the utterance will be like Santhia soche kau ki Bantiya bhag gelau. So that is how I will say it to, if the utterance is directed to one of my friends who has a non-honorific status. So this is how the pragmatics and syntax are at play here. And then we come to the phenomena of agreement shift. So agreement shift is a phenomena where the third person context triggers first person agreement. And it is seen in some South Asian languages like Tamil, Telugu, Assamese, Marathi, and Nepali. But again, it is also optional. Okay, so we have the Assamese, Nepali, and Marathi examples here. So let's take a look at example number 20. So we have two agreement markers here. So one is the first person future and one is the third person future. So if I say he come to Korimbuli Koisile, so we have first person marking on the embedded verb, and then the embedded covert subject will always be, or it will unambiguously be co-referential to the matrix subject. Okay, so it was he who said that he would do the work. So he said that he would do the work. Both the embedded he and the matrix he, they would be co-indexed. Okay, so that's how agreement shift works, and it's unambiguously interpreted as the utterance. The attitude holder is holding the attitude. That is like he consciously says that he would do the work. That's how it is. And we have also said that it is optional. So we can also say the utterance like example number 20. He come to Koribobuli Koisile. So where we get the interpretation, he said that he would do the work. So the difference between the first person and third person agreement is that if in terms of the first person agreement, the embedded covert subject and the matrix subject, they are co-referential. And in case of the third person agreement on the embedded verb, the embedded covert subject and the matrix subject, they might be co-referential or they might not be co-referential. Okay, so it might mean the person said or somebody else said, and he's just reporting the fact. So we see this in language like Assamese, Nepali, Marathi, and Telugu, and also Tamil. So this phenomenon is seen in the presence of only the quotative complementizer. Okay, all in the presence of the complementizer, Buli in Assamese, Bhanero in Nepali, and Asa in Marathi. In case of the initial complementizer, J in Assamese and in J in Nepali, this shift is not seen. Okay, so the first person embedded, so the embedded first person agreement is not seen in the case of, in the presence of the initial complementizer J. Okay. So this phenomena also has the hierarchy for predicate selection, that these constructions are most grammatical under speech predicates and least grammatical under epistemic predicates. This phenomenon is very similar to indexical shift and pragmatics at play in these cases, because when we use the first person agreement on the embedded verb, it unambiguously refers to the matrix subject. But when we use the third person agreement on the embedded verb, it might refer to or it might not refer to. So here syntax is contributing to the pragmatics. And then finally, we have indexical shift. So indexical shift, it can be defined as a process where an indexical is evaluated not against the utterance context, but with the index associated with an attitude. Okay, so in simple terms, it is defined as the case where a first person pronoun is used to refer to the attitude holder. So we have an example like John thinks that I am smart. So this is a case of indirect speech. And the matrix subject John and the embedded subject I, they are co-indexed to each other. Now, I know that this is an ungrammatical sentence in English if the I and John are co-indexed, but if indexical shift was present in a language like English, then I and John, they could be co-indexed. And this is seen in languages like Maghi and Tamil. And so we have the example number 25. So we have Santia Bantia ke kahkai ki hum tora dekhli hal. So the embedded subject you and the embedded object you, they can be co-referential to the matrix subject and the matrix object respectively. Okay, so in certain contexts, they can be co-referential. So the hum can be co-referred to Santi and Tora can co-refer to Banti. So this is how indexical shift works. And research is being done in languages like Maghi and Tamil. So these two are the languages that we have come across so far with presence of indexical shift in case of India. And finally, we come to the conclusion. So we see that the interface between syntax, semantics, and pragmatics provides us with a comprehensive understanding of how a language functions and how it is interpreted. And when we look into the interface between syntax and semantics, it involves mapping syntactic structures to their semantic representations. And when we look at the interface between semantics and pragmatics, it examines how meaning is shaped by context. And how, when we look into the interface between syntax and pragmatics, then we see how the syntax interacts with context to influence the pragmatic interpretation. So overall, the study of this interface, it provides us with a comprehensive framework for understanding the structure, meaning, and use of a particular language. And understanding this interface enhances our ability to analyze and interpret language more accurately, leading to effective communication and solution to the complexities of human language. So there are like very complex phenomena going on in the human language, and we can provide solutions, or at least try to give an account for those complexities. These are the references, and thank you everyone for this interpretation.
Thank you so much. It's a wonderful presentation. And I get to learn so many things from you. Wonderful. I would request Professor Sri Kumar to give his expert opinions.
Sushant, yeah, it was a wonderful presentation. You have covered a lot of ground. It's quite a wide spectrum. It's very difficult to catch up with all the things that you have told us here this evening.
Thank you, sir.
I find that you have, tried to look at the history of interface studies, starting with generative semantics, where an effort was made to connect semantics with syntax, and autonomy of syntax was disputed, and so on. And then, yeah, all those things you have narrated. And pragmatics is a very difficult area or a terrain to capture. And yeah, that is, I don't know whether, you have covered, yeah, you have covered it adequately from a functionalist perspective, but from the generative perspective, I don't think you have addressed that properly in the way that ought to be, but perhaps that is not your concern.
Yes.
I had, regarding the data you have talked about, I just wanted certain clarifications. What was the example you had in 12 and 13?
Slide numbers.
Either or kind of questions, no?
Yeah, just give me a minute. I'll just
What
share
are
the
the,
screen.
what is the name you have given that for? given for that?
Alternative questions.
Alternative questions. So yeah, they are traditionally called as the distinctive questions.
For 12 and example number 12 and 13.
Yeah, example
Yeah.
number 12 and 13.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Alternative questions we call
Alternative
it.
question.
Yeah, in traditionally they are called as distinctive questions, and there have been efforts to tackle with it from the generative perspective. Of course, I have not looked at it personally, but Richard Kane had a paper long back during my student days,
Okay.
where he had tried to look at it from the generative perspective. And similarly, you have talked about bias questions.
Yes, sir.
Bias questions. Uh, I think probably it is uh, some kind of tag questions, right?
Yeah, they can be tag questions. They can be used using question particles. They can be also minimizers.
Question particles would be of the sort of negative particles, right?
Yeah, that's what it's seen in Assamese. So in Assamese, we have constructions like Rame kitabkhon kinile no. So that would mean Ram bought the book, comma, right, question mark.
Yeah, similar is the case in Dravidian languages also. So depending on the in English, depending on your bias, you state a proposition and then seek a confirmation of it.
Yes, sir.
If you use a positive, John came, didn't he? John came, didn't he?
Don came, didn't he? Yeah, that's how it is.
John did not come. Did he? Then it becomes did he, something like that in English, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, that's how it is.
But in our languages, we have the same negative particle.
The same negative particle in both the proportion, be it positive or negative, the question particle is the same.
Is the same, yeah.
It's the same.
So in Malayalam also, and also Telugu also, I think it is the same thing. Like kada in Telugu they use, and in Malayalam you use the what is that, negative copula with a question particle attached to it. Something like alle. Okay. Yeah. So they are. Yeah, I think there is no harm in calling it as a tag question. Rather, you are using a a tag marker along with
Tag
it.
marker
Right?
there. So
Yeah.
But it's in recent research, these tag questions also come under the category of biased questions. That's what we found.
Yeah, you can call it as a bias question also, going from the pragmatic perspective.
Pragmatic perspective, from the point of view of context.
Yeah. Then you talked about bole.
The complement.
Bole. In Bangla, you call it as bole. Yeah.
Bangla is bole, Assamese is bole.
In Assamese it's pretty bole. That is the that's the famous that is the verb say.
It's clear from the
verb
verb say.
complementize that I think that is stretching from the Dravidian belt through the eastern belt, connecting Odia, Bangla, and Assamese. We have that bole, extension from Dravidian belt. So that is the clause final complementizer. Yeah. But along mimicking the Indo-Aryan complementizer system, you also have J or Z. Yeah. Now bole has that other functions also, which is there in Dravidian languages also. So probably they are not complementizers in those cases. Like in quotative, you have my name is so and so. You can say मेरा नाम राम ऐसा करके है, or something like that. There you use Ram bolke hai, mera naam Ram bolke hai.
Yeah, that's the hybrid Hindi, Urdu, and Telugu interaction that we came across.
In Dakhini you can
Dakhini Hindi.
Dakhini Hindi you can use mera naam Sri Kumar bolke hai or karke hai.
Yeah.
So there it is not a complementized word. It has to be taken as a noun phrase with a functional particle or whatever it is.
Okay.
Intonation. rising intonation.
Rising
is there.
intonation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think probably intonation is also not applicable in the same way across the spectrum of Indian languages. It may not be the case that all languages have rising intonation to signify
A question.
a question. In Dravidian languages, for example, I think it is rising, falling intonation rather. One no, one no, something like that. And then you also have clefted questions and all such things. Do you have clefted questions in some means?
I don't think so. Can you just give me an example, sir, please?
No, like instead of saying oh, what is your name, you may ask something like what is it that is your name, something like that. What is it that is your name? Or what did you eat? What is it that you have eaten?
Oh, well, then there we have the this focus particle key. Key bostu jitu tumi khala. What is it that you ate? Key bostu asile what type of bostu was it that you ate? What type of thing was it that you ate?
I'm not sure whether you have a clefted question as such.
Yeah.
In Hindi, you don't have a clefted question. You don't have a clefted construction as such, right? Then finally, in agreement shift, I didn't follow you much. What is? Can you just repeat what is it that you have?
Okay. So in agreement shift, we have a first person agreement on the embedded verb. Okay. And the matrix person and the matrix subject is a third person. Okay. But when we go to the context, this third person context is triggering first person agreement. So the third person is the attitude holder here, or it unambiguously refers to the third person actually. So the embedded covert subject. So we have a covert subject in example number 20 in the embedded clause. He, small pro, come to Korim Buli Koisile. So the small pro and the matrix subject are always co-indexed to each other in case of a first person agreement on the embedded clause. But in case of a third person agreement on the embedded clause, the embedded covert subject, it might be co-indexed or it might not be co-indexed to the matrix subject.
Indexical shift, what you have?
Yeah. So
no, my question is whether when you have indexical shift, is it always the case that you have reflexive pronouns as the subject of the embedded clause?
Oh, no, they are not reflexive pronouns. They are personal pronouns.
No, but if you go by the example like 25, right?
Yeah.
In Dravidian,
yeah,
the
that's
embedded subject position would be occupied by
tan.
Tan, which is reflexive.
Reflexive,
it is called as a third person pronoun, but it acts reflexively.
Yes,
in Hindi, you have aap in the same function. Ram ne kaha ki aap bahut achhe hai or something like that. Aap has a similar function for,
So in case of Indo-Aryan, I have yes,
in Hindi perhaps it may not be possible, but it is something like that.
So in Dravidian, I came across this research by Sundaresan. So she has been working on the topic since 2011. So she is still working on the topic. So so there she proposes the anaphor. Tan is an anaphor. So Tan is an anaphor, and also Tan is responsible for this indexical shift. So Tan being the anaphor of the embedded clause, there is also a covert subject in that clause. That's
Okay,
what.
okay, yeah, that is, it must be a complex pronoun, right?
Yes, sir.
She must be assuming that there is a kind of reduplication of the pronoun,
Might be the case.
reflexive pronominal, perhaps. Okay. Yeah. Uh, yeah, it used to be treated as a logger for long back. I don't know, perhaps nowadays the logger for has come to
Yeah,
have a
logophoric
different.
agreement has also come into the picture when explaining agreement and
No,
in lexical state.
logophoricity as such has come to have some different kind of, connotations, I believe, in the recent times.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. Yeah, I tried to catch up with your work in due course. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Professor Shrikumar. Thank you for your suggestions. Any questions from the viewers?
Yeah, Mosel has a question.
Okay, Marcel.
Yes, sir. Mine is, I don't know whether my question will be relevant to the topic or not, but I just noticed few things that I want to know in the slide 13,
Okay, yeah.
example 12.
Let me share it. Right, 13 example.
Rame.
Yeah, example 12.
Rame kitabkhon pinile neki.
Yeah.
This Rame, if it is the Ram, if Ram is ended by M, but if what about this may? Is it always may or ne or te if it is ended by T or D or such as John, Sita, and,
Okay.
Juliet?
So, Mosel, so the thing is like, so Rame, the A is the case marker here. So I didn't gloss it.
Mhm.
So it's Ram and A. So in case of a transitive
Subject
verb,
concept.
yeah, nominative case marker. So in case of a transitive verb, we have the A marker on the subject.
So it will be, if it is Juliet, then it should be Juliet Te or Juliet Ne.
Juliet A. Juliet plus A.
Acha. Okay. And the same thing I noticed it in the example 25 also, Santia,
Santia,
and
yeah.
Bantia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the interrogative sentence, cha khabone coffee.
Yeah.
Then this ne is does it sometimes construe the meaning of or?
Yeah, it always gives the meaning of or. So I have already, we already mentioned that ne is the interrogative disjunction. So it gives the meaning of or in a question. It gives a alternative question or distinctive question, as Sir said. So it always gives an or, but in the setting of a question. It has to be the sense. It automatically turns the construction to an interrogative construction.
Apuni bhat khale ne.
Yeah,
then it is not. It is still also or is implied or not.
So that's one area that we have been trying to explain, or at least, yeah. So their ne is used as a question particle, and that ne is again giving the or interpretation in sa khabo ne coffee. So when we look from the perspective of an answer, bhat khabo ne. So I can reply yes, no, or whatever I feel like. So when I look from the point of view of an answer, I say that whatever comes to my mind, yes, no, or whatever. But when we go to the syntax and or syntax semantics account, then we see that ne, it chooses one set, okay, one set of answers, and the other set is like totally blank. It in case of polar questions, the first bhat khabo ne. So I have one set containing all the answers. So, and I have to choose from that set. But when I use ne as an or, okay, so I'm giving two particular sets with two particular entities. So I'm giving two choices of tea or coffee, and I have to choose from them or choose both of them. So we are mainly we are playing with the sets. So in case of apani bhat khabo ne, we have an unrestricted set containing all possible answers. And in case of sa khabo ne coffee, we have only two sets, which have only the options tea and coffee.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, that's what.
Any more questions?
Just one more. Can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you have a subject marker. You would like to call it as a nominative case, or why not an ergative case?
It's actually an ergative marker. Ergative
Ergative
case.
case.
Do you have
Yeah.
ergative properties then?
Oh, well, SME's case system is supposed to be split ergative.
Okay, just like in Hindi, or is it somewhat different?
Yeah, it follows the same pattern as Hindi.
Yeah, I think it would be better to, you have to look at it carefully, because maybe there could be other patterns also, like in Sindhi. I long back I had looked at one work, and there some other pattern was observed over there.
Okay.
Not exactly like in Hindi. And about Hindi also, lots of other works are coming up regarding the different varieties of Hindi and the kind of ergativity that obtains there.
Yeah.
Sometimes there could be ergative marker, but it may not show ergativity or something like that. Or you may have masking of the object, but still you may get agreement with the object or something like that. Like in Hindi, if you have case marking of the object, then the agreement will be default, right? You will not agree with the object, even in case where you have an ergative subject. So that kind of complexities and different kinds of things are happening in different languages.
Yes, sir.
I would like to ask a question.
Yes.
Yes. So I wanted to ask, please excuse me if this sounds a little off track, but how are you restricting the domain of your data? As in, how are you restricting which variety you are dealing with? When you're saying Assamese, how are you restricting this? Is this the traditional grammar rules, or what are you doing when it comes to interlanguages? Because here there were some discussions where we talked about how certain patterns have and tendencies are going throughout the Assam, Oriya, Bengal. So certain patterns are carrying over. So when you are dealing with data, when you're saying Assamese has this kind of thing, or how are you restricting your variety? What strategies are you taking to do this?
Okay, so for this question, so I like to say I'm looking only into those phenomena which are uniform across all the dialects. So I looked at into this question particle and the bias question phenomena that is uniform across all the dialects of Assamese. The hybrid complementary system is uniform across all the dialects of Assamese, and also the phenomena of agreement shift. First person agreement in case of a third person subject, that is also uniform, at least from Tinsukia in the east to Nalbari in the west. I'm restricting my data to that area. So that's how I'm looking into those phenomena.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Before I wind up this session, I would like to request all the participants to become our member, to become the member of CEL, to support us so that we can achieve our mission unitedly. So this is my request to all the participants. I believe no one has questions. Thank you so much, Sushanta Rajkhowa, for
Thank
a
you,
wonderful
ma'am.
presentation.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you so much, Professor Sri Kumar, for your suggestions and advice. Thank you, viewers. Thank you so much.